All right, so I'm recording now, and I'm here with Jim Pinto, who you guys normally know from the Metal Workshop podcast and from the Grumpy Old Gamers podcast and also from the GMS Magazine podcast back in the day. And he has a new game that or a revision of an old game that he made up on Kickstarter. Jim, do you want to just explain what you have going and why people might be interested?
Yeah, and you didn't get any of that right, so that's fantastic.
What did I get wrong?
It's not a game; it's a source book. It's an adventure.
But it's a game. Yeah, but the way we talk about RPGs, like if I have a module out, right, or if I have a supplement out, I'd say it's a game, right?
Okay. Yeah, no, I would never have done that, but that's fine.
Okay, yeah, I am much more abusive with the English language than you are, Jim.
Yes, that is true.
So all right. So what? Tell us about the source book.
So it's my turn to be pedantic now, by the way.
Okay.
I've also been on the show regularly with just the regular show, and I've appeared now twice on your Wuxia.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So Jim has been on the Wuxia Weekend podcast, and you've been on here promoting stuff in episodes like this, and I can't remember exactly, but yeah, you've been on other programs as well.
Right. So hopefully this pedantry that I'm displaying now will lead to more sales.
Well, if we're being pedantic, it's pedantry.
Is it pedantry? Not
I think
pedantry?
so. Pedantry? That sounds like a pantry for people that are pedantic. Do you know what I mean? But
or who have feet.
So okay, that's fair enough. All right, but yeah, that one's maybe questionable because I've just always assumed it was pedantry. But go on. I don't want to keep derailing.
I think that's just where you want to put the emphasis. This is the best episode yet.
It is.
Should we talk about the Kickstarter now?
Yeah. I think we should actually discuss the Kickstarter.
So what do you want to know?
Well, okay, so I remember before it was like a sandbox type campaign that had the sort of storylines woven in a kind of seamless way. And I was under the impression this was a sequel, but it's actually a revision. So I guess
it's just a revision.
So what are you revising? What were you trying to accomplish with putting out the revision?
There were a lot of typos in the original that I didn't like. I wasn't happy with. Some of it was just sloppy writing because I felt rushed or I wrote in the middle of the night. So I'm cleaning up little things like that. I never liked the art. I thought the art was always subpar in the original because I just didn't make that much on the Kickstarter.
Yep.
To pay for good art. And so I wanted to clean that up. The maps are getting colored by Alyssa, so the maps are going to improve. And I changed a little bit of the topography. There's a new subheader font. And I'm adding a few more NPCs, and I hope to add some more storylines. In my edits, I'm on page 250 out of 350 or whatever it is. So it's coming along. It's moving along smoothly. It's just something that I've always wanted to make better. Mm-hmm. And because it's the only really successful thing I have on Drive-Thru RPG, I thought people deserved a nice one, a nice edition of it. A nicer edition of it.
All right, so you're cleaning it up, basically. You're cleaning it up and you're making it much more presentable and just fixing some things. The typos I totally understand because those happen to me an awful lot. But you seem like those happen to you less, so I would think that might rub you the wrong way to have typos in your book.
Well, yeah, certainly, especially if I do a book and I don't hire a copy editor for it. Let's say I do a 4-page PDF and it just isn't economically feasible to hire a copy editor to do it, to look at it, because I'm only going to make $1 on the damn thing anyway. It's annoying when those mistakes get through. But if I hire somebody and the mistakes are still in there, that's especially frustrating.
Yeah, and that can happen. That can definitely happen. And, you just have to work with somebody you trust.
No, and I do, and it's just one of those things where I'm just so anal about how the books look that this one really needed a facelift all around.
And so number one, I guess my first question is, when is this going to materialize? Like after it's been funded and everything, how long do you think it'll be before the book is released?
I want to do it as soon as possible, right? I've given myself to the end of the year, but my hope is I can have it done by September.
Okay, so that's pretty near. That's
Yeah.
just like a few months away
because
now.
most of the work is done. I'm only waiting at this point for Alyssa, and then if it does really, really well, I'll order a few more pieces of art.
And it's Alyssa who that's doing the maps?
Alyssa Faden.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's great. She's great.
Yeah, she is. She did the original maps, but she's now coloring them for me. So she sent some today, and somebody, and I'm doing some dice for the game as well. It's for people that pledge that high. And again, I'm doing the thing where these aren't POD; these are being printed somewhere else, off-site. It's not through Drive-Thru RPG. The printing.
Okay.
And so this will be a nice lay flat book for people that back the hardback book.
So is it offset printing that you're doing, or is it?
Yeah. So offset printing at this.
Oh, go ahead.
And so the only way to get this nice edition is through the Kickstarter. Afterwards, if people want to get the hardback or the softback, and I won't offer a hardback, I'm sorry. If they want to get the softcover edition, they'll be getting it through Drive-Thru if they don't buy it through this Kickstarter.
And and that's going to make a big difference because I mean I've looked into color stuff with the POD, and that's a much bigger challenge than if you're doing it in offset.
Right. And now this offset is black and white because it fits the tone of the setting that I've created to do a black and white book. But that was the case the first time around as well.
So does that mean so
PDF will have a little bit of color? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So the maps, are those going to be in color in the offset printing one, or are those going to be in color?
There's no maps in the book. The maps don't come in the book. They come as a extra PDF.
Ah, okay, I get you.
The book is 6x9, so the maps looked compressed and ugly inside the book, and so I didn't want to do it.
Okay, I can appreciate that. I've had that kind of a problem before, and it's either shove the map in there and just make do, or since then I've learned to always make sure my maps match the page style of the book, but when they don't match, there's your options are limited. Did you look into like anything like how feasible is it to put a map in a book these days like they used to back in the day, like when they would have remember like the old tear out maps? Are those even possible anymore, or are those just
Yeah, those are possible, but you're paying through the nose to do anything like that because you have to go with offset or web press to get that kind of printing, and then that means doing a certain minimum number of copies. And so if I'm not selling 1,000 copies, I can't. Yeah. I can't. And of course, now with tariffs, you have to print a book in the United States.
Yep.
So, and Canada has better presses right now than the United States does for that sort of thing, which I don't know how that happened, but that's what happened. And I would never print a book in China. I don't know why people think that's a good idea.
A lot of people were doing that. A lot of people were. I saw a lot of, and I get a lot of messages actually from Chinese printing companies on Facebook and stuff. I don't know if you do, but like there's a lot of printing going on there. But obviously it has some downsides.
Color matching is one of the biggest problems when you're dealing with China. And the other thing is, just because the proof looks a certain way doesn't mean the final is going to look that way. And I've run into that problem with China a lot. And once it's in the States, you've already paid the customs fees, you've already paid the shipping, and whatever the final is, that's your final. Unless you're made of money, you can't ask China to fix those problems because you've now set your project back another 3-4 months.
Well, and wasn't there a company that that their books were destroyed by the government?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's also that potential issue. Though I think that was an unusual case, but still.
Yeah, that was rare, and he did get his money back, right? The printer was forced to destroy them, but the guy got his money back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it wasn't like it wasn't like it wrecked him. It's just that it delayed I think just delayed the project. But all right. So for people who don't know the thing that makes this book exceptional, what's your elevator pitch for it?
That's really tough, right? Because I can't give away any secrets, because it is in fact the secrets that make it what it is. If that makes any sense.
That does, but I think you can speak around them, right? Like you can kind of allude to what they are, and
so it is, in my opinion, this is how all adventures should be written. This is the format. that adventures should be written in. For game masters that don't like to be told what to do, but rather given the tools to do their job properly, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's presentation of background, which goes on for a very long time. There's a presentation of the setting itself, which goes on for a while. Then there's here's all the locations, and that's another 50 pages. And then here's all the NPCs, and I think there's about 200 of them. And then here's all the storylines that you can run using the tools that we just presented in the first 5 chapters. And then also there's special rules for social interaction, and then the special brand. There's a little bit of genre mixing going on in this adventure, and I don't even want to hint at what that is. But if you go out there, you can probably read about it. This is a 5 out of 5 book. I'm not even bragging there. I'm not tooting my own horn. If you go and you look at the reviews, everybody that's ever reviewed this gives it high marks. And it is because of the nature of how it's written and the attention to detail and the sheer depth of what you're getting.
And I can verify that because Jim sent me you sent me a copy last year, right? Maybe I bought it. I don't remember, but you had mentioned it, and I read through it, and this is one where I recommend it to people whenever we're having a conversation about just old school adventure design and different approaches and things that you kind of need, like examples that you really need to know if you're looking for guideposts, and this was one I thought was really well done and innovative. So I would agree with it strongly, and it's not just because I know Jim, because this was an opinion I formulated like right after you first came on the podcast that first time, well before we were doing Metal Workshop and stuff. So I see in the description too you mentioned Harn. In the where you're talking about this, and it's not Harn's system, but you just mentioned Harn as a system that it sort of is maybe would work well with. Can you number one, are you a Harn fan, or was that just an example that leapt to mind?
I'm a huge Harn fan. I love. We've talked about this. I have a degree in anthropology, and so I am particularly drawn to settings that are grounded. Mm-hmm. And that are rooted in history, and that they just feel like real places that I can imagine. I can make decisions quickly because I can imagine these people are real and they act in real ways.
Yep.
And so that inspired me a lot when I decided to make this an Anglo-Saxon Shire, and I designed it and I built the valley in such a way that it's difficult to get in and out of, which you can imagine is a really good way to set an adventure so that the players can't just go and get help and they have to solve things themselves. And it also allows you to have NPCs who are cut off from what's going on in the rest of the world, so the things that are happening there, it's kind of shocking when they happen there, because these people are kind of, I don't want to say they're backwards, but they're certainly a little more technologically what's the word I look for? Rudimentary than maybe their counterparts in nearby parts of the world. And so that means that the PCs have to come in and help, even if these people don't want their help.
No, and that's a great sort of geographic setup for adventure. And I like the Harn inspiration. I don't think I made that connection, but that might explain a lot of why the book appealed to me when I first encountered it, because I like Harn, and I find that for similar reasons to what you stated, and also just the fact that I don't know, they're very good in Harn at taking something very simple and mundane and turning it into an adventure. Do you know what I mean? Kind of like you're doing with the Valley concept, like this idea. There's a really just sort of basic challenge to the geography that adds to the adventure and to how the players will be interacting with the setting. And I feel like you see that a lot in Harn stuff. So you said that there was going to be some additional material in this book as well. So beyond the the color maps, is there? You said NPCs, and what other kinds of things will be in here?
I've added a couple more NPCs. I don't think I added any new locations, but I am adding a couple more storylines when I get there. Just ideas for little filler stuff. I don't want to add any big storylines. I think that would dilute what's already in there. But I would like to do maybe some small side trek kind of things with some of the NPCs that are in the book that may not get a lot of attention. So is there a way to address what's going on this farm that the GM may or may not have had a plan for?
Okay. And how many NPCs are you adding?
I've already added 5, and what I'm doing is I'm just, as I find I'm at a page where there's some, maybe more than 5, when I get to a space where there's some white space and I can fill it, that's when I'm adding more NPCs. So I'm doing them all in alphabetical order, and I'll just do a name that could fit in there, and I'll make somebody up.
Okay.
And so I don't have an overall strategy except to just give people more content.
Well, and it's the kind of gameable stuff. Like NPCs are always gameable in a sandbox thing, and this is a sandbox, and so
yeah,
I kind of want you normally don't do sandboxes, right? Is that what's your general?
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
I don't really work on stuff for trad gaming anyway. I usually am making GM-less games. I'm usually making GM-less games for people that already have sort of a built-in structure and whatnot. So I love sandboxes, and they're certainly my preferred way of doing things, but they're a lot of work, and so I don't work on them because they just take so much more of my time away from the kinds of things I'm doing.
Yeah, sandbox. You mean in terms of publishing, they take a lot of work, or do you mean in terms of regular play, they take a lot of work, or both?
One more time, you broke up there.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was just saying, when you say that sandboxes take a lot of time, do you mean like particularly in publishing, or just in general?
In publishing. It takes me a long time to write them because I want to be thorough, and I want to look at it holistically.
Yep.
I want to make sure that all the ingredients that are there are adhering to the theme. So it's very easy. Let's look at Forgotten Realms as an example of a sandbox, because that's essentially what it is, right? It's just this massive sandbox.
I'm not a big Forgotten Realms person, so I've always been a little unclear on what the content is on the GM side of things. But
right,
yeah.
Well, we don't have to use Forgotten Realms. We can use anything as an example. Mm-hmm. We could use Greyhawk if that's more comfortable.
Yeah, that's definitely more sandboxy.
Keeping it tonally and thematically coherent, when you get that big, that's difficult, especially in the case of the Forgotten Realms, because they just started deciding that, this also belongs in the Forgotten Realms, and this does, and this does. And eventually it just becomes mud because everything's in there. I use Deadlands sometimes as an example of gumbo, because there's so many different kinds of elements that go into that sandbox that a game master has to pick and choose what they're going to use, because they can't use it all. It's impossible.
Yeah, Forgotten Realms always kind of struck me a little bit Conan-like, in that anything could kind of show up there. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was sort of like Saturday matinee adventure type stuff. It was just, they have barbarians, they have like a, an Asian section, they have like an Arabian section, they have all these different things that could be different adventure type movies. But I've never been huge into Forgotten Realms, so, but I'm sorry, I was breaking into what you were saying there.
No, that's okay. I was just using that as an example, right? Mm. You can use anybody's setting, and you can look at it and say, well, this is one big sandbox. There's not a lot of data in the core book to give you enough of a sense of all the players, so you need to look at the micro of it. So if you're playing, I don't even know the regions of Greyhawk anymore, but if you're playing in, say, Highport, that's a city I know from from Greyhawk, you need to know all the players in that town. Mm-hmm. You need to know all the Uber plans of the orcs who are running things secretly and so on. And that stuff has to be delineated for the game master if the game master is running a sandbox kind of campaign.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just need to know the vital pieces to run the railroad through to the dungeon, right? So the amount of writing to do an adventure in Highport is much less than the amount of writing to create Highport itself.
I get you. Yeah, and I guess there are two ways of going about it too. There's the sort of macro way of here's like a large sandbox with rough sketches of everything, and the GM is assumed to fill it out on an as needed basis or whatever. If they're going to set their campaign in this region of the world, they might flesh out some more of that. And then there's like the real microscopic approach, which sounds like what you're talking about, where you really need to flesh out everything, and it all has to line up. And so there's a lot of detail and a lot of connective tissue. And one thing I like about how you organize this was you kind of make the connective tissue very clear to people separately. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the part that I feel you do like a really interesting job with, because a lot of times, that isn't as clear in the reading of a sandbox source book. So how did you, when you were like, and again, if I'm treading into anything that you don't want to talk about because of secrets, just tell me. But
sure.
But in terms of the storylines, like how did you go about making sure that those threads were consistent? Did you start with the storylines, or did you create the stuff and then find the connective, lines between them? Like, what was your approach?
That's a great question. So, they sort of happened simultaneously, and they sort of didn't. I've run this before I even wrote and published this. I had run this story 4 or 5 different times for people over the years, for different groups, and I'd use different systems. And when you use something like, say, Pathfinder, it doesn't work because people are expecting a fight. They've got 30 pages of information on how to kill things, and then they don't get to use any of that because there's not a lot of fighting in the adventure.
Yep.
So a lot of developing it came through the kinds of games that I was running and what I wanted to play. And then a lot of it became me thinking on my feet. I knew everything in my head, but nothing had been written down. And so, okay, well, I know this is going on in the keep, and I know this character wants this, and this person has been watching the PCs since they got in the valley. So what would happen now in this context? Okay. And so I a lot of the very first times running through it, running people through it, was thinking on the fly. So when I finally sat down and wrote it, most of the work was done. Now, 100 of these NPCs I just made up after the fact, right? Because I needed to fill out the book. Because when I was running it from home, I would just make up an NPC when I needed one. But I can't expect the GMs to do that when they're running it. They need to know who lives in that house. They need to know who runs that shop. And I knew what the big notes were that I wanted to hit. And so those storylines were already done and in my head. Some of the other storylines I made up after the fact because I knew they fit what was going on in some of these NPCs that I had created. Okay. So I didn't run all 50 of these storylines when I first wrote it, when I first was running it for my friends.
Well, that would be a ridiculous number of storylines to run for your
absolutely. And if you're a GM that's trying to be realistic about everything, you're going to run some of those simultaneously. So keeping track of that much information is just too much work to put on somebody.
Yep.
So yeah, people need to pick and choose the ones they like, and let the player stumble into some of the other ones, but not all of them.
Yeah, and that's, I think too, the way that you wrote it kind of by running it first is a good way to go about things. I find that's, you can have, like, my experience with writing stuff is you can write it and put it on paper, but it's not really until you've run it that everything kind of crystallizes in your mind as a GM. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I find, like, if I have a map that I made of an estate, I don't really see what it looks like until the players say, well, what's in this room? What's beyond that door? You need like that kind of exploration from the player end to really force you to map it out in your head and think through some of the stuff that you might not have thought through when you were just, doing the prep. So I think that's a good starting point for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think you can see it. I think you can see it in the book. Like the way that this stuff kind of comes alive is it feels like you've thought about it. Do you know what I mean? And so I suspect it's maybe connected to that. Now, is there anything?
Yeah,
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say a lot of it also has to do with the fact that I just think and run games. I think about games differently, and I run games differently.
So how do you think about games differently, and how do you run them differently?
I can percolate on things, and I can keep things in my head going while I'm doing other things. Right? I want to know when my characters are going through a town. Mm-hmm. I want to know what every single NPC on the street is doing and planning, and I know a lot of people don't do that, and a lot of people don't care. But it's important for me because I want to see that there's value in everybody in the world and not just the PCs.
Now, are you saying that you are actively thinking about this and constructing it as the players are exploring that section of the setting?
Yes.
Live?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So
no, that's a good technique. That's a very good technique.
I'm not just a passenger, right? I'm not just a spectator watching them play. I'm thinking about what the things they're doing, how that affects the world.
Yeah, I call it like thinking about the scaffolding, and I don't do it to the extent that you do. It sounds like you really you've thought about a lot of things on that street. But if I'm running a game, I will I'll sort of, as the players are entering the city, if I hadn't planned on them going there, I don't know much about the city, I'll immediately ask myself, okay, like what criminal organization is influential in this part of town? What are the conflicts? You start thinking about this stuff, and you just start scribbling notes on the page somewhere so that you have it when it might become relevant. But it sounds like you're kind of going door to door and really fleshing out these details in your mind as those players are exploring.
Yeah. Even if they're not interacting with some pieces of it, I still need to know for my own benefit. I need to answer those questions to satisfy my curiosity. So it ends up getting made anyway.
Okay.
And then I start thinking about the logistics of things. I think about, well, how are they getting the copper in and out of town? Mm-hmm. How are they doing the mining and so on? There has to be this person at the assay office who is checking off all these boxes before they can even ship it. There's got to be a bell warden who's washing and weighing the copper at the mine at the top of the shaft.
How much research are you doing for that? That's really fine detail for
Well, a lot of this is shit that I've just learned over the years. Mm-hmm. So I'm not doing a lot of research beforehand all the time.
Okay.
But in this case, I did a lot of research because I wanted to set it in an Anglo-Saxon shire. So I did do research on how their laws were formed and how the ranks of the society worked, because it was an intricate society. There were numerous levels of peasantry in Anglo-Saxon England prior to the Vikings.
And that kind of research is some of the hardest to do for gaming purposes too. Like, you'll have very specific things that you need information on, and then it's kind of like good luck finding that information in books that are covering much more broad topics. Or even if they're covering that topic, you don't always get the info you need, or it's maybe for the wrong year, or it's, that I find when you're doing that kind of historical research for a game, you can read like 300 pages and get a paragraph of text sometimes.
Yeah, that is exactly how it generally works. I think I lucked out in a lot of ways because Anglo-Saxon history is so well documented.
Yeah.
Versus, say, if I wanted to write a Mongolian game, that would be almost impossible because it was oral history for so long. There's nothing written down.
Absolutely. Well, and also it's not getting stuff in English on it is really tricky versus getting stuff on Anglo-Saxon stuff in English is really easy. And I noticed that with anything dealing with that part of the world, you'll get a lot of really accessible micro histories that can give you really detailed information. And one of the challenges I found for, like, I run a lot of stuff set in China, and the challenge there is some of that detailed information exists because there's extensive history there, obviously, but so much of it is not in English. So you have to rely only on English sources. So I can see where that, your starting point is a good one for getting access to that kind of info.
Right.
Now, what was it we were talking about? So we were originally discussing how you were doing, you were sort of thinking through these details because of how you think about games. And so, but you also said you run games differently, or you how do you run games differently?
I don't make myself the center of attention, which is a primary goal of mine as a game master. I like to set the tone as fast as possible, set the situation as fast as possible, and let the players poke at the environment with a stick wherever they want to, and letting them role play the journey to the valley so that they get to know each other and get to find. I think role playing is wearing somebody else's pants, right?
Okay.
And so you have to get comfortable in those pants, and that takes a few encounters, right? That takes a few sessions to do that. So if you're running something like this, you want to give them the room to do that and make the mistakes early on that they're going to make when there's no consequences yet. So if they're talking to one another on the road and they're talking about what's happened and what do you think we're going to find and that sort of thing, I think it's my job as the game master to set that up and make sure that those things can happen organically.
I get what you're saying.
And if I interfere with that, right, if they start, I've watched lots of game masters do this and it drives me nuts. They'll have an NPC tell them to shut up, which I don't like at all. Or they'll see that they're in the middle of role playing and having fun and doing something, and you immediately have them get ambushed because as game master, you're bored watching them talk.
Yeah.
It's their game just as much as it's your game, right?
And
I don't believe that it's a game master's job to entertain everybody 24/7. I don't like that idea.
I don't either. I agree with you strongly on that. I was in a discussion about that. I don't like the artifice of, I don't like speaking like a storyteller, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to feel like I'm performing for the players. I want to feel like I'm among them, if that makes sense.
Right.
But that, what you just said there, I think is pretty key too, because one thing that I observed was sometimes as a game master, when the players were just planning things, that's when I would get antsy as a GM, until I realized that's kind of when I get to relax. Like, if the players are planning and talking and enjoying themselves, they're having a good time, and that means you've done your job of setting things up so that they can kind of chew on it and think about what they want to do. And then, like you said, your responsibility in that situation is to hear what they're saying so that you can plan for it accordingly, or incorporate what direction they're going into the other things that you knew were coming down the pike. So I like that approach. What else about, because we're coming on the 30-minute mark here, what else about this book would you want people to know, especially if they haven't heard of it before?
It annoys me when somebody tries to write a trick ending just to say gotcha.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things I tried to do here is make it, there obviously needs to be a plot twist.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise you've got nothing. If you're just go get the box, oh, the box was there, we fought the monster to get the box, go home. That's a really boring adventure and nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
But gotcha endings aren't fun either. The plot twists need to be smart, or at the very least they need to be convincing.
Yeah.
And I think, without sounding arrogant or anything, I think I've created the best plot twist in D&D's history, in fantasy gaming's history, at least from what I've read. I can't say that with 100% accuracy. But what I've done is paint a picture that is so clear that when the plot twist happens, it's holy shit. How did? Of course, that's what it is. It's that kind of moment.
Yeah, you lay the groundwork.
Yeah.
Well, and to find out, people will have to pick up the book and see for themselves. But it's definitely worth it. This is a good book. And when did you say? You said it's going to be ready hopefully in September.
Hopefully in September? Yeah, because there's really not that much work to do on my end left. I just need once the money comes in, I can order some more art. I'm just waiting for Alyssa to finish the maps, and then bam, I can get it off to the printer. The hard part is going to be I'm actually, because this is coming to my house, and I'm signing every copy, and then I'm mailing them out again. Because it's going that route instead of just shipping from a fulfillment system, that part takes a little bit longer. So September is probably ambitious.
Okay, and is this funded yet? Is this?
Oh yeah, this is more than funded. Okay. I just hit 12,000.
Oh wow. Okay, so this is like people's chance to get in on it, basically.
This is essentially, I want to get this nice printing. You're only backing it if you want the nice printing.
Okay.
You can go online and buy the PDF right now.
What are the tiers? We should do. That's something we should cover actually.
They're really simple. There's just the PDF. There's the soft cover. There's the hard cover, and whether or not you want to add dice.
Okay. All right. So there's and those are all listed on the Kickstarter page.
Yeah.
All right. So people should check this Kickstarter out. We'll post a link in the description. And also you can if you follow Jim on Facebook, you can get updates. Is there a general place where people can go to get information on the games that you're putting out? Do you have like any kind of preferred landing page?
Not really anymore. I used to update my website, but I haven't done that in about 2 years. I don't know what kind of traffic it was getting, to be honest, or traction, if people were really using it very much. I mean, I get stats, but there were a lot of people trying to hack the site too. So
that's a perpetual problem.
I really don't know, and I don't even have an admin account. Right, it's got a different name completely.
Okay,
so they would have never hacked it using the methods they were using. But it's always funny to me. I haven't updated my page in a while. I think Facebook and DriveThruRPG are really the best places to keep up on what I'm doing.
Okay. All right, so Facebook and DriveThru, and now there's no RPG now, so there's no confusion about where to go to that. It's actually a development I'm quite pleased about.
I actually don't like how many different websites they have, but I guess it matters for certain delineations because they have a fiction site and they have a
comic site.
They have a war vault, and you can buy my stuff at nearly every one of their sites.
Oh, so if you're on the comic site, you can still get the RPGs? Is that?
Not necessarily the comic site, but on the War Vault and the Dungeon Masters Guild and one of the other sites, I forget the name of it, you can still buy Post-World Games material. So.
Okay. Yeah, DriveThru is probably the easiest one to head to, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's the one everybody has. Oh, they have DriveThruRPG and DriveThru Cards. Those are the two different ones that I was thinking of.
Okay.
So.
All right. So
anyway.
we'll put a link in the description. Again, it's called King for a Day, and it's the revised version. And there's a really great. You put together like a really good trailer too on the Kickstarter page.
It's really simple. I don't like.
Where'd you get the music, by the way? I was wondering about that. I'm
trying to remember where I got the music for this. I want to say Dave Bluer made it for me, but maybe the guy that made the video himself put the music on there. I don't remember now. Yeah, I made it a long time ago. I've been ready to do this for about 2 years. So I finally got around to the launch.
You are a very productive person.
I apologize, I think.
I don't think any apology is required. It's just I'm always surprised by how productive you are. And then I realize I need to be more productive. Definitely check it out, and we'll be back on. We're going to do another metal workshop soon, and we have other things cooking, so we'll talk to you later.